A high-floor executive office, well past 10 p.m. The city lights flicker outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. The CEO lies on the sofa in the conference room, her eyes tightly shut. Outside in the hallway, the rhythmic squeak of a janitor's cart approaches. She hears the footsteps stop right at the heavy glass door. The janitor enters, his eyes scanning the dimly lit room. An unsealed envelope marked "Confidential" sits exposed on the table. He pauses, his hand hovering near the sensitive documents. The CEO opens her eyes just a fraction, holding her breath. 15 minutes later, an urgent, high-priority email is sent. The man's name is Samuel Ortiz, a 45-year-old single father, a man whose hands are calloused by physical labor, but whose mind is as sharp as a diamond. Back home, his 8-year-old daughter Maya is fast asleep, tucked in by her grandmother while Samuel works the lonely, quiet hours of the graveyard shift. Samuel is a contract janitor at the global headquarters of a massive fintech giant, a ghost in the halls after the power players and high flyers leave for their expensive dinners. But Samuel wasn't always pushing a mop. Years ago, he was a senior internal auditor for a major regional bank, a man who could spot a decimal error in a 1,000-page ledger before most people could finish their coffee. He left the high-stress, cutthroat world of finance after a family crisis shattered his life, choosing stability, peace, and low pressure over a fancy title in a corner office that felt like a cage. He chose the night shift for a reason, so he could walk Maya to school every single morning, hold her hand, and be there to hear about her day every single afternoon. To him, the blue jumpsuit isn't a badge of failure. It's a uniform of protection for the only thing that matters, his daughter's future and her sense of security. He often thinks about the world he left behind, the gray suits, the cold handshakes, the numbers that meant everything while people meant nothing. In this building, he is invisible, a shadow that removes the traces of the day's greed and ambition, and he finds a strange, quiet dignity in that invisibility. The CEO of this empire is Elena Carter, a 39-year-old visionary who built this fintech titan from a small garage startup in a suburban neighborhood through sheer will and sleepless nights. Lately, Elena has been plagued by a series of devastating internal leaks, sensitive trade secrets and acquisition strategies appearing on rival platforms within hours of being discussed. She doesn't know who to trust anymore. Her board of directors, her vice presidents, even her own shadow feels suspicious in the neon glow of the office. The paranoia has begun to eat at the very foundation of her leadership. She feels like a captain on a ship full of holes she cannot see. She decides to stay late, way past the cleaning crew's scheduled start time, but she doesn't tell a soul, not even her personal security detail. She isn't there to finish work. She is there to observe the raw, unfiltered behaviors of those who think no one is watching them in the dark of night. She lies on the expensive leather sofa in the main boardroom, feigning exhaustion, pretending to be in a deep, unintended slumber after a long day of back-to-back meetings. This isn't a trap in the traditional sense. It's a test of the company's most basic and vital immune system, the integrity of its people when the fear of punishment is removed. She wants to see if the culture of compliance she spent years building holds up when the lights go dim and the ultimate authority is asleep and vulnerable. Samuel enters the room, the faint, clean smell of lemon floor wax following him like a shadow, unaware that he is the subject of a high-stakes psychological audit. He sees the sleeping CEO, and he immediately sees the chaos of papers scattered across the expensive mahogany table like fallen leaves after a storm. To most, he is just a man with a vacuum and a spray bottle. But Samuel sees the world through the lens of risk, vulnerability, and systemic failure. He knows from his previous life that a single piece of paper can bring down a skyscraper. He's seen empires crumble over a misplaced memo and a moment of arrogance. He begins his work with a silence that is almost ghostly, moving with a calculated precision that only comes from years of working in the quietest hours of the night. He doesn't look for praise. He doesn't look for a promotion. He just looks for the next smudge on the glass that needs to be erased. He notices the temperature in the room is a bit low for someone sleeping, but he focuses on his task, keeping his head down and his eyes on the floor. He mops the area around the sofa with extreme care, ensuring the moisture doesn't create a slipping hazard for when she eventually wakes up. Every movement he makes is recorded by his own internal clock, a habit from years of auditing, where every second must be accounted for and every action justified. He is a man who respects the space. He treats the CEO's office not as a place of wealth he envies, but as a responsibility he is paid to maintain with excellence. Elena feels the air shift as he moves. She hears the soft click of his cart, and she wonders if this man, who the world ignores, will be the one to prove her right or wrong. She observes the way he avoids looking at the computer screens that were left on. His discipline is almost unnerving to someone used to the constant prying eyes of the corporate world. Samuel steps into the dead center of the conference room. The hum of the city traffic far below is the only soundtrack to this midnight drama. He notices Elena on the sofa. Her breathing is steady and rhythmic, her face a perfect mask of simulated exhaustion and corporate fatigue. For a second, he remembers his wife, how she used to look when she fell asleep on the couch after a long shift at the hospital. He feels a pang of empathy. Even the most powerful people in the city are still just humans who get tired and make mistakes. Immediately, Samuel slows his movements even further. He manually lifts the vacuum head to avoid the harsh sound of it dragging across the heavy carpet. He works around her with the grace of a shadow, showing a level of human respect for her rest that few of her six-figure executives ever bother to show. Then his eyes land on the absolute center of the table, right where a pool of warm light from a forgotten desk lamp hits the dark wood. A large, thick financial envelope is lying wide open, the flap pulled back aggressively, revealing the words, "Confidential, Q for acquisition details." This is the crown jewel of the company's current strategy, a document that contains the exact price, the leverage points, and the terms of a massive industry-shifting merger. If a single photo of this document reached the press or a rival, the company's stock would plummet into the abyss, and thousands of jobs would be erased in an instant. Samuel stands perfectly still. His heart rate doesn't even spike. His years as an auditor have given him a pulse of ice when facing high-risk data. He looks at the document. He knows exactly what it is. He knows how much power is sitting there, unguarded, just a few feet away from a woman who can't see him. He thinks about Maya's college fund. He thinks about the medical bills that still linger. He thinks about how easy it would be to just take one photo. The temptation isn't a loud scream. It's a subtle whisper, suggesting that the rich wouldn't even miss a small slice of their empire. But those thoughts pass through him like a cold wind through a solid wall. They don't find a place to stay. He doesn't reach for his phone. He doesn't try to squint to read the numbers. He doesn't even move an inch closer to get a better look at the secrets within. Instead, he looks up at the security camera in the corner, noting its active red light, ensuring that his own movements are clearly and undeniably recorded for the record. He knows the protocol better than anyone in this building. He remembers the strict rules from his days in the bank. Data left in the open is data already stolen. He doesn't ignore the problem. He doesn't just mind his own business. He realizes that his business is the total safety and integrity of this building. He realizes that silence in the face of negligence is just another form of complicity. He walks to the wall-mounted internal phone, picking it up with only 2 fingers to avoid leaving unnecessary prints on the plastic receiver. He calls the night security desk, his voice a low, steady, and professional baritone that doesn't even disturb the sleeping CEO a few feet away. This is Ortiz from the night cleaning crew. Conference room 4A is currently not secure. Highly confidential documents are exposed on the main table. He requests a formal security log entry, asking for a precise second-by-second timestamp of his discovery, following the internal manual to the absolute letter. But he doesn't stop there. He knows that security guards can be bribed or lazy. He needs a digital paper trail that cannot be erased by a single person. He opens his ruggedized laptop from his cleaning cart, a tool he uses to track his hours, and sends a brief formal email to the company's compliance alias. He documents the exact time, the specific location, and the nature of the security breach, CCing the head of operations and the legal department. Elena lies on the sofa. Her heart is now pounding against her ribs, realizing that this janitor is currently doing more to protect her company than her entire VP of security. She watches through her eyelashes as he returns to his physical work, polishing the mahogany table around the envelope with surgical care. He never once touches the paper. He never once lets curiosity overcome his ingrained sense of professional duty. He finishes the room, empties the trash bins with a silent touch, and then does something that surprises Elena even more. He reaches for a spare blanket stored in the executive closet and gently lays it over the CEO's feet, a small act of kindness that wasn't in any manual. He turns off the main overhead fluorescent lights, but leaves the small desk lamp glowing, so the CEO isn't startled by total darkness when she wakes up. He leaves the room, the heavy glass door clicking shut with a soft, final sound, leaving the sleeping boss alone with the weight of her own secrets. As the silence returns, Elena sits up, her eyes wide, staring at the envelope that remained untouched by the one person who could have sold it for millions. She looks at the phone Samuel just used, and then at the door he just exited, realizing she has just witnessed a miracle of integrity in a world of greed. She realizes that this man, who handles the trash of the wealthy, has more honor than the men who sit in the chairs he just polished. She takes her phone out, not to call security, but to look up the personnel file of the man named Samuel Ortiz. If you believe that integrity is what you do when no one is watching, subscribe to see the shocking revelation the next morning. What would you do if you found a secret that could make you a millionaire? Phenomenon morning arrives like a hammer, and the massive corporate machine begins to grind back into its loud, chaotic life, unaware of the silent drama of the night. The night security team has already filed the incident report, and Samuel's email is sitting at the very top of the compliance officer's high-priority inbox. The tension in the office is thick. The executives sense that something is wrong, but they can't quite put their finger on it. Elena sits in her high-back chair, a fresh cup of black coffee in her hand, watching the sun rise over the glass and steel skyline of the city. She calls the head of IT and the global security director into her office immediately, her face cold, unreadable, and radiating an intimidating authority. "We had a critical security breach last night," she says. The room goes deathly silent. And no, it wasn't a sophisticated hacker from halfway across the world. She turns the monitor around and plays the security footage of Samuel, but she carefully hides the fact that she was the one on the sofa. She focuses their attention on the document, the one that her own senior executive assistant had left behind in a careless rush to get to an elite dinner party. She explains the stakes. If Samuel had been anyone else, if he had been a corporate spy, or just a desperate man with a smartphone and a debt, the company would be over. The document contained the acquisition premiums, the secret numbers that could have cost the company $400 million in negotiation leverage. It wasn't just about bankruptcy today. It was about losing the strategic edge that keeps 10,000 families across the country employed and fed. Elena watches the playback for the 5th time. She studies Samuel's face, the absolute calm, the total lack of hesitation, the pure, unyielding adherence to process. She checks the email logs provided by IT. The report was sent at exactly 10:18 p.m., precisely 4 minutes after his cart crossed the threshold of the room. He didn't wait to see if he was alone. He didn't ponder the what-ifs. He didn't try to find a way to monetize the mistake. He simply followed the system. Elena realizes that for the last 6 months, she has been looking for brilliant geniuses and expensive software to solve her internal leak problem. She has spent millions on encrypted firewalls, on biometric scanners, on high-priced consultants who wear $3,000 shoes and speak in buzzwords. But the ultimate solution wasn't a piece of code written in Silicon Valley. It was a man with a mop who remembered what it meant to have a sacred duty. She realizes that she has been tragically undervaluing the most important layer of her company, the people who see the mess every single night. Honor, the janitor didn't just clean the coffee stains off the floor. He cleaned up the executive team's catastrophic and arrogant negligence. Elena pulls Samuel's full background file. She sees his history, the senior bank auditing background, the tragedy of his wife's passing, the medical bills that led him to this job. She sees his ratings: invisible, quiet, efficient. These were meant as descriptions of a laborer, but she sees them as the traits of a guardian. She sees a man who is overqualified for the broom in the eyes of HR, but who is perfectly and uniquely qualified for the very soul of the company. She decides that the test of the night is officially over, but the real transformation of the company is just beginning. She doesn't want to just send him a thank you card or a small bonus. She wants to empower the spirit of integrity he represents. She sends a high-priority message to the VP of Human Resources. Find Samuel Ortiz. I need him in the executive boardroom in 10 minutes. And don't tell him why. The HR VP is confused. The janitor? In the boardroom? Is there a spill? Elena's response is short. The man who saved this company's future. Now. While she waits, she calls the executive assistant who left the envelope and fires him on the spot without a second thought for his Ivy League pedigree or his wealthy family connections. The assistant tries to argue, citing his connections, but Elena's look is so piercing it silences him instantly. She realizes that competence without character is a ticking time bomb, and she's done letting bombs sit on her boardroom tables. Samuel is found in the basement, finishing his post-shift inventory and prepping his cart for the next night. He is told the CEO wants to see him. His first thought is for Maya. He wonders if he did something wrong, if he broke a rule he didn't know existed, or if the company was being sold and he was being let go. He keeps his head high as he walks toward the elevator. He doesn't hide who he is. He adjusts his blue jumpsuit, wipes a stray drop of water from his sleeve, and prepares to face the woman he watched asleep the night before. The elevator rises to the top floor. The doors open to a floor he usually only sees when it's empty and dark and smells of vacuum bags. He walks past the staring secretaries and the confused VPs who usually look right through him, his work boots thudding softly on the carpet he vacuumed 12 hours ago. He enters the boardroom, the same room from last night, but now it's filled with sunlight and the most powerful and nervous people in the company. Samuel enters the executive suite. He is still in his blue uniform, smelling slightly of industrial-grade cleaner and honest hard work. He looks around the glass-walled room at the stunned faces of the board members. His face is calm. His posture is military straight, showing no fear of the concentrated power in the room. The silence in the room is deafening. You could hear a pin drop on the expensive carpet. Elena stands up from her seat at the head of the table. She walks around her desk, and for the first time in her career, she feels genuinely intimidated by an employee's presence. Mr. Ortiz, I want to ask you a question in front of everyone. Why did you report that envelope last night instead of just throwing it away or ignoring it? Samuel doesn't hesitate for a single second. He doesn't try to give a grand, rehearsed speech about ethics, morality, or doing the right thing for a gold star. Because there is a process, Ms. Carter, he says with a voice that carries the weight of absolute conviction. A company without a followed process is just a group of people waiting for a disaster to happen. My job is to prevent disasters, whether they are spills on the floor or secrets on the table. One board member scoffs, but Elena quickly shuts him down with a glare. He isn't trying to impress the board. He isn't asking for a reward or a pat on the back. He is simply stating the fundamental truth that governs his life and his dignity. Elena takes a deep breath. She turns to the board. then back to Samuel. I wasn't actually asleep last night, Samuel. I was watching you. I was testing the very heart of this company. Samuel's eyebrows twitch. A brief, fleeting moment of surprise. But he doesn't get angry. He doesn't feel like a victim of a trick. He simply nods. Then you saw that the system works, even when the people at the top are too tired to follow it themselves. It's a good system. The room gasps at his bluntness. The VPs shift in their seats, some looking down in shame as they realize they are the ones who often bypass the system. But Elena smiles. His honesty is more refreshing and valuable than any consultant's 1,000-page report. She realizes she didn't just find an honest man in the dark. She found a natural leader who understands that tiny details are the difference between life and death. She offers him the seat next to her, the same leather chair where billionaires sit to sign historic deals, and she treats him with the same level of intense focus. I don't need another janitor who knows how to mop. I need an auditor who hasn't forgotten how to clean up a mess before it turns into a catastrophe. She explains his history to the board, his years of experience that they had ignored because of the color of his jumpsuit and the lowliness of his title. She makes it clear, Samuel Ortiz saw the threat that the geniuses missed, and he acted while they slept. She offers him a new role, one created specifically for his unique perspective. Samuel asks for one thing before accepting, that the cleaning crew's wages be reviewed and tied to a performance-based integrity bonus. Because of Samuel's timely and professional report, the legal department immediately moved to tighten all document retention and security protocols across the globe. The sensitive $900 million acquisition went through 3 weeks later, perfectly silent, perfectly secure, without a single leak to the hungry press. The $400 million in shareholder value was preserved. The company's future was cemented, all because of a 10-minute intervention by a man with a cart. Elena didn't just give Samuel a one-time bonus or a plaque. She offered him a senior position as the Director of Internal Compliance and Risk Management. He accepted the role, but only after ensuring his new contract allowed his hours to remain flexible enough to never miss one of Maya's school plays or morning walks. He also insisted on a new initiative, the night shift audit, where high-level executives had to spend one night a month working alongside the cleaning and security crews. At first, the executives complained, but after the first month, the company's internal efficiency skyrocketed as VPs began to see the operational waste they were creating. The company didn't just get a new executive. It got a new standard of excellence, a culture where no one is too important to follow the basic rules of integrity. Elena learned a lesson she would carry for the rest of her life. The greatest security system in the world isn't a firewall. It's the character of the person holding the keys at 2 a.m. It wasn't a cinematic, heroic act of saving the company from a burning building. It was the quiet, invisible heroism of doing the right thing when you were 100% certain no one was watching. Today, Samuel walks the halls of the headquarters in a tailored suit, but he still stops to genuinely thank the cleaning crew every single night before he leaves. He knows their names, he knows their stories, and he makes sure their voices are heard in the boardroom. He knows that they are the eyes and ears of the building, the ones who really know where the secrets are buried and where the company's foundations are truly strong. The company wasn't saved by a genius CEO or a superstar VP. It was saved by a man who respected the process more than he respected the paycheck. Character is always revealed in the dark, and Samuel Ortiz proved that the brightest, most reliable lights in a company are often the ones we choose to overlook. As he sits in his new office, he looks at a picture of Maya, knowing that his integrity didn't just save a company, it built a legacy for the only person who matters. The leaks stopped, not because of better software, but because the people felt seen and respected. Integrity became the true currency of the company, and its stock value reached an all-time high, driven by a newfound investor trust in its internal governance. If you believe that true character is shown when no one is watching, subscribe for more stories of hidden heroes, and leave a comment. What would you have done if you found that envelope at midnight?